The Quinisext Council, also known as the Council in Trullo, occupies a fascinating, sometimes overlooked niche in the history of Byzantine Christianity. Unlike the ecumenical councils that primarily addressed doctrinal disputes, the Quinisext Council was deeply concerned with regulating ecclesiastical life, discipline, and the practical details of church governance. Convened in 692 CE under Emperor Justinian II, it is sometimes called the Fifth-Sixth Council, because it was meant to supplement the Fifth and Sixth Ecumenical Councils, which had dealt with Christological controversies but left many legal and disciplinary issues unresolved. Its purpose was not to define doctrine in the abstract but to codify rules that would shape the daily life of the Byzantine Church for centuries. The historical context is crucial. By the late 7th century, the Byzantine Church had become highly institutionalized, closely intertwined with imperial authority. There was a pressing need for clarity regarding clerical conduct, liturgical norms, and the relationship between church and state. The council assembled approximately 218 canons, though some sources suggest even more, that addressed matters ranging from clerical marriage to monastic regulations, from fasting rules to procedures for church councils themselves. These canons reflect the Byzantine effort to enforce uniformity across a vast empire, ensuring that the Church remained a cohesive moral and legal authority amidst political turbulence. One of the most striking aspects of the Quinisext Council is its attention to clerical discipline. The canons prohibited bishops and priests from engaging in secular occupations that might compromise their spiritual responsibilities, emphasized proper conduct and attire for clergy, and regulated the admission of novices into monastic life. Married clergy were allowed to remain married, but remarriage after the death of a spouse was strictly forbidden, reflecting the council's attempt to balance human realities with spiritual ideals. Additionally, the canons addressed the behavior of women in monastic communities, establishing strict codes of chastity, seclusion, and obedience, revealing the pervasive gendered assumptions of the time. The council also codified liturgical and sacramental practices. It standardized rituals, clarified rules for baptism, the Eucharist, and marriage, and sought to curtail local variations that might lead to confusion or abuse. For example, it established uniform fasting schedules and outlined proper procedures for church consecration. These regulations demonstrate the Byzantine Church's desire for both spiritual rigor and administrative coherence, a reflection of a society in which law, religion, and imperial oversight were inseparable. Another significant element of the Quinisext canons was their attitude toward heresy and doctrinal deviation. The council imposed strict penalties on those who rejected canonical teachings or attempted to introduce unauthorized doctrines. While the doctrinal points themselves often referenced earlier councils, the Quinisext Council focused on enforcement. It specified excommunication procedures, the handling of heretical clergy, and the restoration of repentant sinners. This legalistic approach underscores the Byzantine conception of orthodoxy as not merely a set of beliefs but as a regulated framework governing both thought and behavior. The council also left a lasting mark on the relationship between Constantinople and Rome. Some canons clearly favored the customs of the Eastern Church over Western practices, including the use of leavened bread in the Eucharist and certain fasting rules, which would later contribute to tensions between East and West. Despite these tensions, the canons were generally accepted within the Eastern Orthodox world and became a foundational reference for Byzantine canon law, influencing later legal collections such as the Nomocanon and the Ecloga. Interestingly, the council's influence extended beyond purely ecclesiastical matters. Some canons addressed civil concerns, including prohibitions against unjust taxation of clergy and monastic lands, as well as regulations for the conduct of bishops in secular courts. In this way, the Quinisext Council exemplifies the Byzantine intertwining of law, morality, and statecraft, portraying the Church not just as a spiritual authority but as an integral component of imperial governance. The Quinisext Council has been both praised and criticized by historians. On one hand, it represents an extraordinary effort to systematize church discipline and ensure moral and liturgical uniformity. On the other, some scholars argue that its strictures were heavy-handed, particularly regarding clerical and monastic life, and that its gendered prescriptions reveal the deeply hierarchical and patriarchal nature of Byzantine society. Regardless, the Council's canons remain a vital source for understanding the structure and values of the Byzantine Church, offering insight into how law, religion, and daily life intersected in one of history's most enduring empires. In conclusion, the Quinisext Council serves as a window into the organizational genius of the Byzantine Church and the broader empire. By codifying over 200 canons, it sought to create uniformity in clerical behavior, monastic discipline, liturgical practice, and moral conduct, reflecting the intertwined nature of church and state. While it addressed some of the spiritual and practical challenges of its time, its legacy is especially significant in the development of Eastern Orthodox canon law. The Council's emphasis on discipline, standardization, and enforcement highlights the Byzantine understanding of religion as both a moral compass and a governing framework, revealing a society in which legal, spiritual, and political authority were inseparable.